Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we have also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
Mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender when in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. Number one. Number two, as the Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we worked very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major, major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision. So that's where the federal
government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran for the
Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into this.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
It is Friday, the 28th of June of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. That's right, folks. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, the French 77s are all mixed and, well, ready to pour for your imbibing pleasure. And just to enunciate the preceding clip, yes, Joe, I'm sorry, but your time is up. Okay, well, I thought Kamala wiped the floor with really everybody there. And she did. I got to tell you, she put on the mom voice and the mom demeanor. And no one talked over her except for Chuck Todd. What's up with Chuck Todd? That little rancorous little brat. But regardless, she's being taken to task today for being, what? A bitch. Whenever a woman is forceful, especially a woman of color, she is a bitch. And that's what she's being taken to task for. I mean, and not only a bitch cop. I got to tell you, in today's new go-go society and world, I think a bitch cop is exactly what we need. And I think Kamala is quite forceful. And I think she's quite firm. And do you really think being mild and demure is going to work in a debate with Trump? He's not going to debate anyway. But as they go head-to-head in the media in the months or whatever weeks leading up to the election, you can rest assured Kamala will know what to say. They call him Big Daddy. Oh, Daddy. Dad. Well, I'm not going to call Kamala Mom. But like a good cop, she knows how to command with the voice and with the demeanor. Wow. When she told the whole panel that really what the American people want is not to see a food fight when we have to put food on the table. Hey, that was a shut up moment, and it did. So, I like Joe to a degree. I was not a Joe Biden aficionado when he was running for president back in the day. I mean, you get what you get. I mean, we got stuck with Dukakis, and so, you know, what are you going to do? Dukakis wasn't necessarily my first choice. Mostly because I was part of the Rainbow Coalition. Yeah, Jesse Jackson's group. And, yeah. So, you know, I had a kind of a different take on who we might want to have as president, but you get what you get, and you put your weight behind that, and hopefully you don't have Lee Atwater out there, which was what was disturbing about Joe defending states' rights. That is a Lee Atwater dog whistle. Joe ought to know that. If people don't want to be bussed in their town, they should have the right not to do that. If people want to be racist in their town, they should have the right to do that. No, Joe. No. The Constitution of the United States affords equal protection and due process for all, no matter what state or locality you live in. If a bunch of Mormons take over a town in Utah, people that don't really want to be taken over by a bunch of Mormons in Utah still are afforded equal rights and due process under law, as stated in the Constitution of the United States, that quaint document. Okay. Well, we also have the horrendous images of the father and daughter. God, I can't, that tears me up. I cannot even look at that picture. And I've got to tell you, I've seen some horrendous things right up close and personal in the real life. You know, it's not that I have been absent from blood and gore. My God, I worked in ER and ICU. Gunshot victims coming in, car crash. I mean, you get kind of bloodied up in a car crash. But yeah, gunshot victims, it was a whole gamut. I've been out in other countries. I've come across horrendous scenes of, well, just put it mildly, I guess, death by right-wing death squad. The results of that. It's not really, I don't know. I just don't like seeing pictures of babies like that one in the Mediterranean, face down on the beach. The picture of the father and daughter. But we wouldn't have those pictures if we didn't have a policy of cruelty. And should I say, I don't know, some sort of authoritarian spanking? Because we dared elect the black guy twice. Twice. Is this part of that punishment? Because the rabble dared rattle what they thought were their sabers. They really think they have power. They really think they have standing in what is this government? Is that what this is all about? So on two fronts, I choose not to look at those pictures. I'm not sure if they should be hidden from view. I think that it would be good to shock the sensibilities of those who need to be shocked. But I see my late son in the eyes and face of that father, that young father. I see my young grandchildren when they were 2. People don't do these desperate acts just because they want to get welfare. If you want to get welfare, all you have to do is be white and fill out the forms, or have somebody do it for you if you can't do it yourself. No. This father, his daughter, and his wife had waited for something like 6 months at the border waiting for their asylum. They have to wait in line. And they only allow, it took us all day to do 2 families. Sorry. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, they say that we open the doors at 10. Maybe it'll be noon. Or maybe it'll be after siesta. That'll be after 2, maybe. And then we'll see maybe somebody then. That's what they have to put up with at the border now. Desperation breeds desperate acts. And what's so tragic about this story is that the father and the 2-year-old made it to the other side. And as he turned to help his wife, the little baby toddled after him and got swept into the current. And that's when he jumped, grabbed her, put her under his shirt. But after swimming in that cold water, he had no strength left. I would say that Trump is personally responsible for this, but I would also say all of us, even those who are shocked by it all, who have spoken the loudest against it, we are responsible too. We all are. Equal protection and due process under law. It's all of us. We did that. And there's a way to stop it, even though the Supreme Court said, oh yeah, partisan gerrymandering, especially if it's Republican. Yeah, we decided on that little case up in Maryland where some Democrats were able to do it. But, come on, how many state houses do they really control? How many? Come on. And we're going to make sure they never do. And then the census question. It's not that Roberts was against the census question. It's just that, he said, don't leave a paper trail implicating me in this. Bring the case again. Just don't effing lie about it. Don't say anything. It's better not to say anything. Okay? And so we're going to get another census question up the pipe into the Supreme Court. And as long as anybody isn't so brazen like this mobster outfit is, Roberts will go with it. They can't even make the racist trains run on time. What kind of fascists are these running the show here? My God, I thought at least there'd be a little bit more, I don't know, competence. Where are the great engineers of the fascist regime? I don't understand. My God. Well, mobsters didn't go to college to learn their trade now, did they? And when I say didn't go to college, there's some other learning that you would possibly get along the way of getting your mobster degree, if mobsters went to college for a mobster degree. They might pick up a little Descartes. They might pick up a little Berkeley and Hume. They might. But since they never were, by and large, ever, I don't know, even by osmosis, introduced to Berkeley, Kant, Hume, and all the rest, they have no idea about competence, let alone humanity. Humanity, that's a weakness. We went over that yesterday, didn't we? Well, we better get on with the show here. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? I'm just so upset about it all. Good debate, though. And I'll say it once again. Every single one of those people running for office, except, I don't know, what's up with Hickenlooper and the socialism thing? Is this guy a closet bircher? What he calls socialism is Eisenhower Republican policies. Socialism, that's closet bircher stuff. So Hickenlooper, this Williamson lady, wow, I don't know. I might want to float above a bed of crystals. I might. And, of course, Tulsi Gabbard, I don't know. There's something, I don't know, like a ringer sort of thing. So, yeah, most everybody up there. I like Andrew Yancey. Is that his name? I'm sorry. But I like that guy. I think he's got some good policies. Put him in the administration. Whoever becomes president has to put each and every one of those, except, I don't know, Hickenlooper? I don't know. Maybe send him as an ambassador to a socialist country like Norway. See how he likes it. That would be nice. Williamson, I don't know. Maybe she's got a gig with Oprah after all this is done. Did she have before? And, oh, no. I am so sorry. Not Oprah. Gwyneth Paltrow. I like Oprah. Gwyneth Paltrow? I don't know. If you can float above a bed of crystals, well, maybe you would like Gwyneth Paltrow and her cleanses. So I think Williamson still has a gig with that concern. And Tulsi, well, there's always the beautiful sunsets on the western side of the Hawaiian Islands. They're really lovely, no matter what political persuasion you may be. Well, on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Trump asked the lawyers if he can ignore the Constitution to make the census racist. Well, because, they put a delay on the census question, and Trump says, wait a second. I didn't get what I wanted. I'm the king here. He's more than a king. We'll have to come up with another word for it, and we will. Trump wants the ability to deport the family members of active duty troops because cruelty doesn't stop, even when people are the most patriotic, because he hates America. Anybody truly patriotic to America? Oh my God, they're the enemy of the people. And Trump made the Secret Service spend over $200,000 in your tax dollars at his hotel. Yeah, your tax dollars. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Cuba just legalized independent movie making, but good luck distributing it, even if you do get past the censors. And Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte threatened his opponents with prison if they try to impeach him. Wow. Didn't Trump say the same thing? I wonder if it's a common affliction among demagogues. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The time flies when you're on one of those Friday rants, and I assure you I have not imbibed in any French 77 that encouraged me to go off. It was really, truly the emotional state of being, well, pretty pissed off at murdering people in the rivers of our country, because that's what it is. Well, if you would go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. To the leftish of the page, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon site, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. You do know that your generosity is really, along with what we get out of our own wallets, but truly it is your generosity that keeps the lights burning and the modems a-humming, those lights blinking in their proper order, or the one on the end, and the other ones are steady, at least on my modem. And thank you for that generosity. We've been resisting, as Resistance Radio should resist, as the founders originally intended, for the last 8 years of continuous 24/7, 365 broadcasting resistance. And even like the musical interludes, that's all part of the message of humanity, loving one another. Everything that's at odds with the prevailing political climate. So thank you for that generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so easy. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. I take care of @JusticePutnam. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get those links up on social media in what we call the scramble period. That 10 minutes is a scramble period. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Of course, mixed in with every single podcast in the world, we're down in the W's. Okay, let's get into this. Time's a-burning, and we only have an hour, so I better hurry up. Emily Singer brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Supreme Court yesterday, Thursday, blocked the Trump administration from adding a racist citizenship question to the 2020 census, a move that could very likely keep the question off the decennial population count that determines how House seats are apportioned. Well, the court blocked the question from being added to the census ruling that the Trump administration lied about why it wanted to add the question in the first place. The court sent the case back to lower courts, which are currently looking at evidence that the question was specifically designed to keep Democrats out of power. Well, if they'd just gone to Roberts and said that's what they wanted, that's what they would have got. Instead, they lied about it. Then he would have been on record pretty much being an accomplice to a crime. Come back to me after the lower courts rule that it's really just to keep Democrats out of power. We're jiggy with that. I mean, how in the hell did the 5-4 majority get on this court in the first place? Well, Trump actually wants has asked his lawyers if there are any laws that would prohibit Trump from delaying the census until he gets his way. The Constitution says the census must take place every 10 years, and that clearly states that the census should be taken every 10 years on April 1st. And that's known as the decennial census date. Even in its argument, fighting for the inclusion of the citizenship question, the Trump administration argued that it needed to begin the printing the questionnaires on July 1st, also known as this Monday. It's unclear what the Trump administration will do and how far it will fight to ensure it can rig elections for the next decade for Republicans. But what is clear is that Trump doesn't care at all about the rule of law and will bend and ignore it to implement policies that suit his racist proclivities. In other words, the perfect president for the GOP. Breaks in the traditional terrestrial radio block period? We don't need no stinking breaks in the traditional terrestrial radio block period because, hey, we're a salon. So let's get on with this. Zach Ford of Think Progress brings us this next offering. Donald Trump's war on immigration is about to see yet another escalation, with the administration reportedly targeting families of active duty service members. Reportedly, that means they're doing it already. Okay, I'm here to decode the codes. Some people have to follow journalistic practices, and well, they should, but we're a salon. Okay, we know how to interpret these things. According to attorneys familiar with the plans who spoke to National Public Radio on Thursday. Wow, that's one way to leak it now. The Kochs own it, though. Okay, just to be clear. The administration is taking aim at certain accommodations for members of the military whose family members are undocumented immigrants and have no means for adjusting their immigration status. Well, sometimes they're undocumented immigrants because their marriage status files are being held up. What's up with that? I suppose if you're bringing in angel babies from Russia, it's okay. You'll be fast-tracked for that. In fact, I wonder if that's why there's such a delay for everybody else. Look it up. I am not kidding. Parole in place currently grants these family members a reprieve from deportation and the opportunity to apply for a green card. It is only available, however, in 1-year increments. Family members who enter the country legally but overstayed a visa are not eligible, though they could instead receive deferred action for up to 2 years. In many cases, you have to go to your country of origin, and it's easy if it's like France or Ireland, and go to the embassy there and process your file. you and your spouse. Now, it might be a little rough if your spouse is, dodging IEDs in whatever theater we happen to be in. And there's a few of them. The premise of the Parole in Place program is to ensure that members of the military can focus on the expectations of their deployment without worrying that their family members back home will be kicked out of the country. Well, if you're handing this country over to a hostile foreign power, do you really want your troops to be thinking about their duty? Of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Trump is profiting from the Secret Service agents he puts to work to protect him. And, that's a good gig if you can get it. Usually when you're paying for security, you're paying for security. Security isn't paying you. Topsy-turvy world we live in now, isn't it? Well, the Secret Service had to spend $215,254 in tax dollars at Trump's Washington, D.C. hotel in his first year. The details of yet another corrupt Trump-related transaction came from Secret Service documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act. Pretty soon we won't be seeing any of those act requests anymore, because I think that act is going the way of all quaint laws from previous. I think they'll call it ADT. After Donald Trump? I would like to have after Donald Trump be the demarcation when there is no more Trump. That's what I would like to see. So maybe that would be DDT during Donald Trump and after Donald Trump. That's what it should be, DDT. How toxic can that be? When Trump has events at the hotel, like fundraisers for the Republican Party in his re-election campaign, he requires Secret Service services and protection because he's the President of the United States. Even though he was installed, the Secret Service has a duty. That's one government function of duty he wants, I'm sure. His decision to do business at the hotel forces taxpayers to send money Trump's way. Well, I know his cult of supporters think this is sticking it to the libs. Yeah, it's deconstructing the administrative state. Well, the massive spending included $30,000 paid from the agency for 2 days of use of the Trump International Hotel. That was connected to Trump's first re-election campaign fundraiser, where guests paid $35,000 a plate. Trump's decision to patronize his own property while holding office has raised red flags, not just around an ethical conflict of interest, but also what some say is a violation of the Constitution's emoluments clause. Yes, of course. And we all know that bars federal officials from accepting benefits from foreign or state governments without congressional approval. I think all that Trump has to say is that Mitch said it's okay. He's been doing it for quite a while. A federal judge ruled on Wednesday that a lawsuit from nearly 200 congressional Democrats against Trump, alleging he has violated the emoluments clause, can continue. Trump is also being sued by attorneys general in Washington, D.C. and Maryland for breaking the law with his corrupt practices. The Secret Service spending shows that Trump's corrupt practices began almost immediately as he was sworn into presidency. I would say it probably started way back in the 80s or the late 70s, maybe even earlier. But let us not quibble over a food fight when there's food to be put on the table, especially on a date certain, okay? Let's not do that, because the fact remains, he enriches himself at taxpayer expense, casually mingling corruption with his private interests, and he only has to go 5 blocks to do it. And I'm sure he makes the limousine pay him to drive him there, too. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we're not going to charge any Secret Service for the use of the golf carts that we have at our golf course. And when we get back from our break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, new category of movie, the Zomcom. Early on in The Dead Don't Die, we're informed that the story will end badly. Indeed, those very words are spoken by police officer Ronnie Peterson, played with deadpan panache by Adam Driver to Chief Cliff Robertson, and equally deadpan Bill Murray. In fitting Jim Jarmusch fashion, the fourth wall is broken early on, letting us all know that the main characters are aware they're actually in a movie. Set in the fictional Pennsylvania town of Centerville, taken from Frank Zappa's 200 Motels, the comedy/satire focuses on local law enforcement officials played by the aforementioned Driver, Murray, and Chloe Sevigny, who join forces with other locals to battle the undead. The plot launcher here is polar fracking, which changes the Earth's rotation, causing the sun to shine at night and, of course, the dead to rise. In addition to the trio of cops, there's a strange Irish funeral home owner named Zelda, played by a swaggering Tilda Swinton, who's somehow an expert at taking out zombies, but alas, can't stay long enough to save the town. Without spoilers, Zelda's exit in the hands of any other director would be downright absurd, but Jarmusch manages to make it work. While the movie is a spoof on the zombie genre, it's also a satire about the addictions of modern life, with a splash of Trump-era commentary. The undead hilariously mutter about the things they coveted in life, ranging from coffee and Chardonnay to cars and trucks to Wi-Fi. A local homeless hermit and narrator, played by Tom Waits, wraps the picture with a wonderful pointed soliloquy to this effect. The Dead Don't Die is as funny and witty a movie as it is star-studded, and succeeds because it doesn't take itself too seriously. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
New Hampshire has abolished the death penalty.
My name is Ramsey Clark, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The Vermont Senate and House of Representatives both have voted to override Governor Chris Sununu's veto of the bill that repealed capital punishment, with votes that could not have been closer. The override received exactly the two-thirds necessary in both the House and the Senate. In the House of Representatives, the vote being 247 to 123, and in the Senate, 16 to 8. Passage of this legislation makes New Hampshire the 21st state to abolish the death penalty. Of the other 29 states, 4 have issued a moratorium on capital punishment. So in effect, 25, or half the states in the United States today, have no death penalty. The bill to abolish capital punishment in New Hampshire, interestingly, was sponsored by Representative Rennie Cushing, whose father was murdered in 1988. Cushing first asked the legislature to abolish capital punishment 21 years ago. As Representative Cushing said, the death penalty doesn't work. It doesn't work for victims, and it doesn't work for society. It's time to let it go.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. President Grover Cleveland had a growing problem. The nation was in the midst of a deep depression. Unrest amongst working people was mounting. The workers at the Chicago Pullman Palace car factory had declared a boycott against the company. They were angry that their wages had been drastically slashed while the rents in Pullman's company town had stayed the same. The boycott of Pullman cars threatened to snarl railroads throughout the nation. And on this day in labor history, the year was 1894. President Grover Cleveland signed the law that declared Labor Day a national holiday. He hoped setting a day aside in recognition of labor would help appease frustrated workers. The bill had been rushed through Congress. It passed both the House and Senate unanimously. But the idea for Labor Day did not start with D.C. politicians. Working people themselves conceived the idea of the holiday. 2 men with very similar sounding last names are both credited with coming up with the idea of a Labor Day. The first was Matthew McGuire. He was a machinist and secretary of the New York Central Labor Union. His birthday was also today in labor history. That year was 1850. The second person credited with calling for a Labor Day was Peter McGuire, a carpenter. The very first Labor Day celebration took place in New York City on Tuesday, September 5th, 1882. The goal was to demonstrate the strength and the spirit de corps of the trade and labor organizations. 5 years later, Oregon became the first state to officially declare a Labor Day holiday. More than 24 other states had founded similar holidays by the time the National Labor Day was declared. For more than a century, Labor Day has been set aside to remember those who fought for a better life for themselves and their children, and to remember the struggles and celebrate worker solidarity.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The first debate in the 2020 presidential election is in the history books. 20 of the 25 declared candidates for the Democratic nomination vied for precious airtime during the 4 hours of questioning spread over 2 consecutive nights. We'll get to that coverage in a moment, but first, the Supreme Court officially ended its current term on Thursday, handing down the final decisions of the session, including the 2 biggest cases they heard this year. In a decision that could have severe electoral ramifications, in a 5-4 vote on partisan gerrymandering, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal courts have no place in settling fights over how district lines are drawn. That's the bad news. Thankfully, Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the liberals on the court in rejecting the Trump administration's attempt to put a citizenship question on the 2020 census. Writing for the 5-4 majority, Roberts said there was sufficient reason for concern about why the Commerce Department wanted to add that question. Critics say putting such a question on the census could result in minorities being undercounted. Trump tweeted that he'll ask lawyers whether it's possible to delay the census so his administration can take another swing at getting the question on the forms. After the Senate rejected the House emergency border funding bill because of the provisions added by progressives that guaranteed the money would be used to raise the standard of care for migrant children in the detention centers, Nancy Pelosi caved and brought the Senate-passed version without those protections up for a vote in the House. It passed by a vote of 305 to 102. And Donald Trump is in Japan for the G20 summit, where he already met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. When asked by reporters about discussing election interference with the Russian president, Trump looked at Putin and said, "Don't meddle in the election," and wagged his finger and said it again, "Don't meddle in the election." Yeah, that'll do the trick. Now back to the debates. Night 2, which featured 4 of the top 5 candidates, was certainly more spirited and contentious than the first night, which Elizabeth Warren easily dominated. But it was Senator Kamala Harris on night 2 that had arguably the most game-changing moment, or 5 minutes, when the gloves came off and she challenged front-runner Joe Biden on his record when it comes to issues of race and civil rights. In this case, busing.
In this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist, but I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. You also worked with them to oppose busing. You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools, and she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that.
Harris was undeniably the breakout star of night 2 of the first debates. As for the others, frontrunner Joe Biden was obviously the biggest target of the night. He was pressed on many issues, including his vote on going to war in Iraq.
You voted for the Iraq war. You have since said you regret that vote. But why should voters trust your judgment when it comes to making a decision about taking the country to war the next time?
Because once Bush abused that power, what happened was we got elected after that. I made sure the president turned to me and said, "Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq." I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq, and my son was one of them. I also think we should not have combat troops in Afghanistan. It's long overdue. It should end. And thirdly, I believe that you're not going to find anybody who has pulled together more of alliances to deal with what is the real stateless threat out there. We cannot go it alone in terms of dealing with terrorism.
Bernie Sanders challenged Biden on that core difference.
One of the differences that Joe and I have in our record is Joe voted for that war. I helped lead the opposition to that war, which is a total disaster. Second of all, I helped lead the effort for the first time to utilize the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, which is the most horrific humanitarian disaster on earth. And thirdly, let me be very clear. I will do everything I can to prevent a war with Iran, which would be far worse than disastrous war with Iraq.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all night hawks in the Diner of Life. And, of course, the French 77s are available for your imbibing pleasure. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit, slated for a high in the low to mid 80s. And overnight lows will be in the mid 50s, and it looks like we'll be in the low to mid 80s throughout the weekend. Oh, programming note, real quick here, during weather, of course, the weekend will be filled with a mix of regular programming and, well, special. I am going to my son's celebration of life on Sunday programming, and I won't necessarily be around to take care of all the buttons and dials. So I'll have my robot do that when I'm not actually at the dials. We'll be back on Monday. I don't quite know if I'm gonna have a full show, but we'll have something. And but I will be here, well, moving the dials and the levers during David's show. So stay tuned for that. But just to give fair notice, I will be celebrating the life of my late son with, a few hundred of his very close friends, and I kid you not, they are close. Now, there's some that are even more intimate, and those numbers are, pretty large, too, in the scheme of things and how the world works. All right. So, once again, it looks like we'll be in the mid-80s for overnight highs, mid-50s to low 60s for overnight lows. Well, grass pollen is back to very high, and I would know. The air quality index, though, is good at 8 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains very high at 9, so do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.9 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 80%. I should mention that there is a possibility of scattered showers from thunderstorms in the area. And as far as I'm concerned, that's always nice as long as it doesn't start fires. And if it does, there's enough water coming down to put them out. You can't count on it, though. But if it can rain and give ionized mineral water, that's always a good thing. Okay, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 74 degrees and sunny. Paris is 92 and sunny, and they remain under a heat advisory. Get out of town, folks. Go to the Brittany coast. Really, it's much cooler there. Rome is 96 and sunny with their own heat advisory. Kiev is 70 degrees with a light rain shower and wind. Kabul is 82 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 85 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 72 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 56 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 86 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny in the summer. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Sarah Marsh of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Until now, Cuba's independent filmmakers have had to scramble to get their projects made due to the lack of legal recognition, and while their works have sometimes won renown in film festivals abroad, they have lacked distribution at home. The government said on Thursday yesterday, however, that as of August 23rd, a new law will approve the figure of the audiovisual and cinematographic creator as an independent artist and create a national film fund. While Cuba's movie industry welcomed the long-awaited news. Many cautioned it remains to be seen how it will be implemented. We've been waiting for many years. Gustavo Arcos Fernandez Brito, a Cuban film critic and film studies professor in Havana, told Reuters, this will not, however, he continued, resolve the issue of distribution, which remains controlled by the state. In a country that has been dominated by the state since the leftist revolution of 1959, it was long up to the Cuban Film Institute to produce and finance movies, in between exploding cigars trying to take out Fidel, apparently. But filmmakers began to make movies independently from the 80s thanks to new technology like video cameras. You didn't need 70mm film on a crane anymore, now did you? A majority of Cuba's filmmakers now work outside of state institutions, saying it gives them more creative freedom and that they have been tolerated to some extent by the authorities. Their legal limbo, however, has created trouble in obtaining permits to film in public spaces or to import equipment. It has also been difficult to gain funding since many foreign film funds will award money only to projects by a legally recognized production company with a corporate bank account. Try getting one of those when the Film Institute of the country says, oh, sorry, you little filmmaker. Really? Do you really need a bank account? Now go on. Well, the new legislation will create 3 new private sector licenses for those working on independent movie projects, operator of a movie equipment, from lighting to drones, casting director, and production assistant. The Cuban government could not immediately be reached for comment. Cuban officials in the cultural industry have in the past denied accusations of censorship because they always do. They know how to censor themselves. Truly. Movies that are perceived to be overly critical of the government, like Santa and Andres about the state persecution of a dissident gay novelist in the 80s, are typically not screened on the island at all. Though the 2016 Santa and Andres won several prizes abroad.
Je te donne seulement l'amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters, and who blames them? I mean, they're in Manila. They better be anonymous, because you never know what might happen here after writing this story. But anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, Duterte, in a profanity-laced diatribe on state media, by the way, warned any of his critics that if they dare try to impeach him, he's going to throw them in jail. And when they get thrown in jail, they don't get out of jail alive. In fact, sometimes they don't get out of jail alive or dead. They just keep them there. And he told UN official and top Asian lawmaker groups that this, they call that a pattern of persecution and assaults on free speech, and who wouldn't? But Duterte has the ear of a certain Donald Trump, who, I must say, shares his policy ideas. And we should be careful. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, like I told you. We're going to meet up here on Monday, with or without a River City Hash Mondays. But do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.